My roommate is attempting to sublet her room to someone I have a restraining order against, and I need assistance. To provide some context, when I was a freshman in college, a guy named Mark, who was 21 at the time, began persistently harassing me to go out with him. Despite my repeated refusals, the situation escalated to a point where he forcibly ripped my shirt off at a party in an attempt to touch me. I filed a police report, and Mark was subsequently found guilty of assault. As a result, I obtained a restraining order against him, which requires him to stay at least 1,000 feet away from me. Fast forward to this week, my roommate, Jessica, needs to find someone to sublet her room while she studies abroad for the summer. She only learned about her departure 2 weeks ago and has been scrambling to find a replacement since then. Unfortunately, she found Mark on Craigslist and asked for my approval to let him move in. I showed her the court documents regarding the restraining order, but Jessica insisted that she couldn't find anyone else and that I would just have to deal with it. This led to a heated argument, and she stormed out of the apartment. This morning, Jessica texted me to inform me that Mark would be moving his belongings into the apartment today. I called the police, but since Mark hasn't shown up yet, they can't take any action. Jessica also mentioned that she would be staying for the rest of the week. According to the lease, she has the right to move anyone in without my permission, and the same applies to me. However, the restraining order complicates things. The landlord told me that it was up to Jessica and me to resolve the issue, as we both have one-year leases that expire in December with identical terms. In summary, my roommate is trying to sublet her apartment to a man I have a restraining order against, and she has told me to just deal with it. The landlord and police have not intervened. In response to some comments, one person asked if Mark is aware that he would be sharing the apartment with me. I mentioned that he is aware because Jessica posted the ad with a photo of both of us without my consent. I have already promised to call the police if he shows up, but Jessica has locked herself in her room and refuses to listen to me. I am currently sitting by the door with 911 on speed dial. Another commenter suggested that I should call the police the moment he arrives. They asked if Mark has signed any sublet agreement, as that could complicate his situation if he attempts to enter the apartment. I explained that Jessica claims Mark has already paid her for 3 months in advance and signed a contract with her. I told her that her contract does not override my restraining order, but she simply ignored me. I plan to call the police as soon as I see his car pull up, which is less than 1,000 feet away. Jessica will still be here for the rest of the week, and I fear that this situation may escalate. As an update, I added some details to clarify the situation. Jessica and I were not close friends, we were merely roommates with separate bedrooms and a shared kitchen and living area. I had only known her since last December when we signed our leases. We had hung out occasionally, but our only real connection was her interest in anime and my Asian heritage. The Craigslist ad that Jessica posted did not include a photo, but she had used a generic picture of us from our college's Facebook page, which she took down before I could take a screenshot. After I made my initial post, Jessica remained locked in her room for 3 hours. I tried to talk to her, but she refused to come out. When she finally emerged to get food, she walked past me as if I didn't exist. Everyone I contacted told me that until Mark actually showed up, no crime was being committed, so I couldn't report anything. I spent the night sitting by the door and watching for Mark's car. This continued until early Saturday morning when Jessica woke up for her morning jog. I had stayed up all night on the couch, still watching for Mark's car. When Jessica tried to sneak out past me, I woke up and blocked the door, demanding an explanation for why I had to stay up all night waiting to call the police on Mark, knowing I had a restraining order against him. Jessica's response was that the restraining order didn't matter to her. She claimed she had dealt with unreasonable people like me before and had never listened to any restraining order, so why should she start now? The more I listened, the more nauseated I felt. Jessica essentially admitted that she was disregarding my safety. I told her that she was being unreasonable and that I would continue to monitor the situation for Mark's arrival, considering taking legal action if necessary. My story continues with Mark claiming he had text messages and emails to support his side of the story. The police checked his phone and found messages from Jessica that indicated she believed I wouldn't mind sharing the apartment with him because he was a chill guy. It turned out that Mark had even posted his own ad looking for a male roommate, which revealed that Jessica had been dishonest as well. The police ultimately released Mark because he had proof that he didn't know I was the person he would be living with. I felt somewhat relieved by this, especially since I had seen the emails and texts exchanged between them. Jessica, however, was charged with disorderly conduct, and her mother came to pick her up on Sunday evening. Later that day, Jessica and her mom returned to the apartment to finish packing for her study abroad trip. Jessica made some snide comments about me supposedly going roommate hunting to find her a subletter, as I had mentioned I would. I chose to ignore her remarks. This morning, Jessica left for her flight, and I realized that the good thing about our separate leases is that I am only responsible for my own rent, not hers. I plan to relax for the rest of the summer while she faces eviction for failing to pay her rent. In summary, Mark had no idea it was me he would be living with. Jessica got arrested, and she thinks I will find a subletter for her, but I'm going to let her face the consequences of her actions. In response to some comments, one person noted that it sounds like a tough situation for everyone involved, but it seems Mark genuinely didn't know about me. They suggested that since we are on separate leases, I should be in the clear legally and financially, and that I should let Jessica deal with her own issues. I confirmed that our leases explicitly state that we are only liable for our individual portions of the rent, so I am indeed in the clear. It's frustrating to think that Jessica would let a man get arrested over something so trivial. Another commenter expressed disbelief at Jessica's actions, suggesting that she must be lacking in common sense. I agreed, explaining that Jessica seemed solely focused on her plans to go abroad and ignored the potential consequences of her actions. She couldn't find anyone to sublet, so when she found Mark, she thought her problems were solved, disregarding the issues until I called the police. One more commenter wished Jessica had faced more serious charges, noting that she had cried to the police officer, which likely influenced their decision to go easy on her because she appeared young and innocent. I reiterated that the lease clearly states I am not liable for her rent, and even if she tried to sue me, it would be my word against hers, and I felt confident I would win that legal battle. Mark is now staying as far away from the situation as possible and has apologized to me, trying to get his deposit back from Jessica. Now, shifting to another story, my best friend's fiancé confessed his love for me while still planning to marry her. I told her about his confession, and she ended the relationship, and I'm now helping her move on. My best friend and I have always shared a close bond, and I truly adore her. We are open and honest with each other, as close as two people can be without any romantic involvement. We even joke about being wives because of our closeness. Due to her meticulous nature, we've discussed various hypothetical situations, including how we would want the other to handle certain circumstances. For instance, we've talked about what would happen if a guy asked one of us out or if we both developed feelings for the same person. One recurring topic has been the dreaded scenario of one of us having a boyfriend who has feelings for the other. We've both agreed that it would be terrible, but we couldn't come to a consensus on how to handle it. I've always insisted that I would want to know, no matter the circumstances, but she has been adamant about not wanting to know. 3 years ago, my best friend started dating a guy named Alex, who was already a loose member of our friend group, so we were all familiar with him. Initially, I didn't think much of him. He seemed cool, courteous, and respectful. As he became more integrated into our group, he got along well with everyone. The guys liked him, the girls were excited for my best friend, and most importantly, she was thrilled. She had always dreamed of being in love, and he seemed perfect for her. He treated her and everyone else with great respect, and while he and I got along, our conversations were mostly limited to small talk during group gatherings. Over time, I noticed that he was particularly interested in my love life, encouraging me to pursue my goals and take my time. My best friend had always done the same, but I found it odd that Alex was so invested in my romantic endeavors. I've always been the odd one out in our friend group, as I missed. I didn't think much of it until about 4 months ago when I met a man named Max, who was 25. He completely swept me off my feet, and it was entirely unexpected. Our romance has felt like a fairy tale, and because of my limited experience with relationships, I've spent a lot of time discussing my feelings with my best friend. She has been incredibly supportive, offering advice and encouragement. Her fiancé, whom I'll refer to as Jake, is often present during these conversations and occasionally chimes in. Everything seemed wonderful until Jake started acting strangely. When we would hang out as a group, I'd share stories about Max, and Jake would suddenly become uneasy, pointing out that seemingly normal things Max did were red flags. For instance, when Max surprised me with a late-night stargazing trip, something I appreciated because I love surprises and work in astronomy, Jake went on about how dangerous it was for me to go out alone. Jake has always been polite and supportive to others, and his judgment is highly respected, which led my best friend to start questioning Max's intentions based solely on Jake's doubts. Meanwhile, all of my other friends thought Max sounded fantastic and dismissed Jake's behavior as odd. During this time, Jake confided in me that he planned to propose to my best friend. I was ecstatic for them and promised to keep it a secret while he sought my advice on the ring and how my best friend wanted to be proposed to. Everything seemed fine until it wasn't. The tipping point came when Max met my friends for the first time. Everyone liked him, and he seemed to get along well with everyone. However, during a conversation between Jake and Max, Jake abruptly dropped his drink on the table and stormed out of the pub. My best friend was confused and followed him, while I approached Max to find out what had happened. Max looked shocked and explained that Jake had been trying to play the protective older brother role, which he had learned from some of the guys in our group. Most of them were joking around, but Jake was much more serious. He left after Max expressed how serious he was about me, and Max reassured him that he would never hurt me. Later, Max speculated that Jake might be jealous. I was hesitant to believe that, as Jake had never done or said anything to indicate he had feelings for me. He had always treated me like everyone else in the group, even though we spent more time together because I frequently visited my best friend's house. I decided I had enough of the stress and messaged Jake first. I asked if he was okay and expressed my hope that everything was fine among us. The conversation went as follows. "Is everything okay? I hope we're good," I texted. Jake replied, "It's not cool. I don't trust that guy. Do you mind if I ask why? No one else has bad vibes. Everyone even invited him to the beach tomorrow." Jake responded, "What are you saying? He looks at you funny. I can't explain it properly. You've known me a while, you know I have your best interests at heart. Trust me on this. I understand that you can't help but get bad vibes, but no one else does. I'm sorry, but I need more than trust me to go on. While I appreciate your concern, I'm capable of making my own mistakes, and I don't think this is one. It would mean a lot to me if you could try to get along with him to make it easier for him to fit in. I plan on keeping him around for a while, and my best friend wants to do double dates and stuff. You're going to run into him eventually." Jake replied, 1. Double dates sound lame. 2. Even if they didn't, I don't want him to come. I said, 1. Take that up with your lady. 2. Do you really not like him that much? He responded, okay, he seems alright, but it's kind of weird how a theater kid can be so alpha. It's more that I'm jealous. I replied, I resent the notion that theater guys can't be manly. The group is really tight, and everyone really likes you. You've been one of us for years now. Max got a lot of attention tonight because he's the new guy. I'm sorry if you felt excluded, but I promise it's really not like that. After a long pause, Jake sent a message that read, I've been thinking very carefully about how to phrase this. I don't want you to think I don't love your best friend because I do very much, but I'm also in love with you and have been for about 2 years. When I realized it, I thought about breaking up with her, but you were always so in your own world that I thought I'd never have a shot, especially since I was your best friend. I do want to marry her, but I would rather you didn't tell her. What happens next is up to you, I guess. I was taken aback and asked him if this was a joke because it certainly wasn't funny. He replied, sorry, but that is the truth. What are you going to do? I didn't respond immediately, and he sent me several more messages asking what my decision would be. I told him I was still thinking it over. Since I posted about this, he has continued to send messages, wondering what I was going to do. I made it clear that I hadn't made up my mind, but I also emphasized that I didn't reciprocate his feelings. I felt devastated, and my emotions paled in comparison to how my best friend would react if she knew. I desperately wanted to tell her, knowing that if I were in her position, I would want to know the truth. The last thing I want is to marry someone who isn't open with me about something like this. However, when we joked about this situation earlier in the year, she insisted she didn't want to know. I understand it's not my responsibility, but I still feel guilty. I keep wondering if I did anything to provoke Jake's reaction and if I can even continue to pretend he never said anything. His affections have never been returned, and Max was with me when I received the message. He has been incredibly supportive, albeit a little annoyed with Jake for obvious reasons. To summarize, my best friend and Jake met 3 years ago, and he fit right into our friend group, getting along with everyone and being an overall pleasant person. Life continued, and they moved in together, which made me so happy for her because he seemed to be everything she had ever wanted. Then I met what I thought was my dream boyfriend, Max. Everyone was pleased for me, except for Jake, who became standoffish and strange about it. Jake wants to marry my best friend and asks me for advice, which is a bit ironic given the circumstances. After Max and Jake met for the first time, things escalated quickly. Jake began messaging me, confessing that he was in love with me but still wanted to marry my best friend, wanting to keep his feelings for me hidden. I do not return his feelings, and I feel the need to discuss this on Reddit. Should I tell her? Should I keep this to myself? I feel upset with Jake, and I feel terrible for my best friend. I'm not sure I can face her while she marries someone who is hiding such a significant truth from her. I'm overwhelmed and need advice. In an update, I realized this would likely be a lengthy post. There were many differing opinions on what to do, and many of you provided excellent reasons for your suggestions. However, there seemed to be a consensus that this situation is terrible and that there is no ideal answer. Many people agreed on the idea of writing a letter, as suggested by a couple of commenters. The gist was that I should write a letter, include screenshots of the messages, and give her the information that way, allowing her to have some control over whether or not she wanted to know. I admit that telling her there was something to know felt like I was forcing her to open it, but I felt it was necessary. I prepared the envelope and went to her house while Jake was at work. As I approached her door, she answered and immediately asked what was wrong. To my everlasting shame, I burst into tears, which was quite pitiful. After I collected myself, I began saying what I had practiced in my mind. I reminded her of our discussions about hypothetical scenarios and how one of them had actually occurred. She had always stated she didn't want to know, but I wanted to give her the option. I handed her the letter, and without even opening it, she started crying, prompting me to restart my explanation. The absurdity of us both standing in her living room, crying over each other, made us giggle a little. Many others had assumed she had noticed or understood Jake's feelings, and they were correct. But it gets even crazier. I honestly cannot believe I'm describing this, but my best friend had assumed that Jake had a harmless little crush on me, the kind that people in relationships sometimes have. However, when he didn't tell her about it, she began to feel uncomfortable. She did something she shouldn't have, she snooped. Months ago, she had discovered a file on his computer with my initials buried among a slew of other documents. She handed me his laptop to read while she read my letter. Inside, he had written stories that resembled fiction about the three of us living in a polyamorous relationship. Some of the content was sexual, which I might have understood more if it had only been fantasies. However, there were also extensive narratives about our lives together. It was surreal to read about myself in that context. Their lives in that way was clearly not ideal for her. She was disturbed by the way Jake had spoken to me in the previous day's messages and those he had sent since. I asked her many questions, including whether she felt safe, and she assured me that she did. When I inquired about what she wanted to do, she stated that she wanted to leave him. She also apologized for not informing me earlier about her suspicions regarding Jake. While it bothers me that she didn't tell me sooner, especially given what transpired later, I've basically forgiven her and decided to put any discussion about it on hold for now. She doesn't need that stress right now. I was relieved that she wasn't upset with me for bursting her bubble. Instead, she seemed more concerned about her own situation. It felt like a secondary issue compared to the gravity of what we were facing. This was not something I expected to happen during my vacation. The conversation then shifted to my concerns about her safety. While Jake does not appear to be dangerous, his behavior is quite compulsive, and it's clear that he is irritated that his fantasy is becoming more and more distant from reality with Max in the picture. I also found myself worrying about Max's safety, as Jake's jealousy could lead to unpredictable behavior. As we continued to talk, I could see the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders. She expressed her relief at finally being able to share her feelings about Jake and how she had been grappling with them for a while. It was evident that she had been feeling trapped in a relationship that no longer felt right to her. I reassured her that she had my full support, no matter what she decided to do. We discussed the possibility of her seeking help, whether it be from friends, family, or a professional. I encouraged her to take the time she needed to process everything and to prioritize her well-being. It was important for her to feel empowered in her decisions moving forward. I also made it clear that I would be there for her every step of the way, whether she needed someone to talk to or help with logistics. As the conversation progressed, I couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed in such a short time. Just a few weeks ago, everything seemed perfect in her life, and now we were navigating the fallout of Jake's hidden feelings and the impact they had on our friendship. I felt a mix of emotions: sadness for her situation, anger at Jake for his betrayal, and relief that she was finally ready to take control of her life. In the days that followed, we continued to talk about her options and what steps she could take to ensure her safety and happiness. I encouraged her to set boundaries with Jake and to be firm in her decision to leave if that's what she truly wanted. It was crucial for her to reclaim her power and not let anyone dictate her happiness. As we wrapped up our discussions, I felt a sense of hope for her future. While the road ahead might be challenging, I knew she had the strength to overcome it. I promised to be there for her, ready to support her in whatever way she needed. Thank you for following along with this journey. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.